What if Bella was pregnant after Edward left? Friday, November 4, 2005. As Mike ran from the theater, Bella and Jacob both stood and left. Jacob because he couldn't handle watching this god-awful movie. And Bella, while she shared the same sentiments about the movie, because she was concerned about her friend. And silently she realized she felt a little queasy herself. But brushed off the feeling as usual anxiety. What a marshmallow. Jacob chuckled, as he opened the door for Bella. I think he's just sick. Bella defended, rolling her eyes. It's been going around. Jacob mimicked the act, rolling his own eyes, and shrugged. Bella sighed and sat on the stairs, the nausea increasing like a wave. Are you good? Jacob asked, and Bella smiled and nodded, not wanting him to worry. She was used to nausea by now, and it typically passed, she just needed to breathe. I'll go check on him, I guess. He walked away, leaving Bella to sit on the stairs and breathe slowly. Willing the lightheadedness that had come over her after watching Jacob walk away. Before she could give in to the urge to stick her head between her legs, Jacob returned. He started. Doesn't sound great. He shook his head slightly, sitting next to Bella on the stairs, putting his arm over her shoulders. Jake, she protested, and leaned away from his body. Jacob, in his easygoing ways, didn't look fazed and instead reached out for her right hand, holding it in his warm one. When Bella tried to pull away, he lightened his grip slightly but didn't let go. He started. Tell me something. Bella froze, feeling where the conversation was going. What, Jacob, you like me, right? You know I do, Jake. Bella said, sighing so slightly that he couldn't hear it. She internally begged for him to stop. Begged for him not to ruin this for her, as selfish as she knew it was. Better than him in there, right? He said, pointing towards the restroom door. The side of Bella's mouth lifted a little, and she nodded. Better than all the other guys you know. Bella sighed and nodded stiffly. But that's all, he concluded, making a statement, and not questioning. Bella felt conflicted. She knew she should be honest but she didn't want to hurt him. Not because it would hurt him, but because hurting him might push him away, and she needed him. But she knew how selfish that was, so spoke the truth. Yes, she whispered. That's fine. He smiled. I won't stop fighting for you, though. Just know that, if you ever feel ready I'll be here. Bella sighed. If only it was that simple. I won't change, Jacob. Bella muttered. I am sorry. Jacob's face turned more serious. It's still him, right? Bella cringed. Her nausea worsened and Jacob's face became blurry in front of her. She really didn't want to puke on his shoes, that really would scare him away. This time Jacob noticed. We don't have to talk about it. It's fine, he stated. But this really doesn't bother you, does it? Quote. He gestured down to their entangled hands, the warmth of his hand feeling nice on her skin. No. So, what's the problem? I just think it means something different to me than it does for you. That's my problem to deal with. I know how you feel, it's okay. I promise. Jacob replied, his eyes softening. I'm here for you. They made eye contact and Bella could tell he was telling the truth. Before she could reply, Mike appeared back from the restroom, announcing his desire to go home. Bella understood completely, and grabbed an empty popcorn bucket from the concession stand and helped lead him to the car. Jacob did seem irritated, but did help Bella guide him into the back of the Rabbit. They dropped Mike back at home, Bella wishing him well. She took a deep breath as she tried to hold back her own nausea, made worse from the car. She prayed to herself that it was just her usual anxiety causing the feeling, and not the same illness Mike and her other classmates had been stricken with. Jacob had been very quiet on the journey towards her house. Bella hoped to herself that she hadn't scared him away with her confessions, despite him seeming confident about it all before. It wasn't right for her to lead him on in such a way. She shivered, and Jacob noticed. They were stopped at traffic lights, so he shook off his jacket and threw it around her shoulders affectionately. No, Jake, she protested. It's cold, you need it. He frowned. It's really not that cold. Girls are just always cold. Bella rolled her eyes and playfully, at first, put her hand on his forehead. But the heat made her pull it away quickly. Jacob, you're burning up. He snorted and ran a hand across his forehead. Your hands are just ice cold, Bella. Maybe. The rest of the drive was quiet. They pulled into Bella's drive an hour before she was due to arrive home, so she turned to Jake, about to invite him inside, but he had a concerned, confused look on his face. He said. I would come in, see Charlie. But I think you might be correct, I'm suddenly not feeling great. Oh no, Bella started. Not you too. Do you want me to drive you home? No, Jake said. I'll be fine. Just feeling off. Bella nodded, opening the door of his Rabbit and turning to say goodbye. Call me when you get home, she asked, and he gave a small nod and strained smile before driving off. Entering the home, Charlie's voice bellowed from the living room instantly. Bells, he questioned. Bella resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Who else had a key? Yeah, it's me, she replied. One sec, just gotta pee. She didn't. She needed to puke. It had been building this entire time and she just made it to the small bathroom upstairs, turning on the sink taps so Charlie wouldn't hear. And emptied the contents of her stomach into the toilet. If this hadn't been a common daily occurrence, she would have been paranoid she'd fallen victim to the same stomach virus. Honestly, Bella doubted she'd even notice if she had, given her daily anxiety symptoms. She made note to take her temperature often as she rinsed her mouth and washed her hands, before heading back downstairs to Charlie. Hi, Dad, she offered, sitting on the couch. You're home early, he said, checking his watch. Yeah, Mike got sick. She sighed. Probably that stomach flu going around. Are you okay? Charlie grimaced. I'm fine. For now, she responded. She had time to come down with it, though. After sitting with Charlie for a while, mindlessly watching the game he had on the TV, Bella ised herself from the couch and went into the kitchen. It had been 35 minutes now and Jacob hadn't called. She figured she'd just call herself, she was worried. Billy picked up on the fifth ring. Hello, he said, warily. Hi, Billy, it's Bella. Did Jake make it home yet? He left here over a half hour ago. He's here, he said, tonelessly. Oh, he was supposed to call me. Bella replied. He was getting sick so I was just worried. Yes, he was too sick to call. He's not feeling great right now. He sounded uninterested and Bella realized he probably just wanted to care for Jake. Okay, Bella replied. I could come down and help. If you want. No, Billy answered quickly. We are fine, stay at your home. He sounded almost rude and Bella frowned at his tone, so different from his usually welcoming character. Bye, Bella, bye, Bella replied, but Billy had already disconnected. Bella sighed heavily, putting the phone back on the receiver. She didn't feel any less worried, but at least he was home. Glancing at the time and seeing it was 9 p.m., she figured an early night would do her some good. She told Charlie she was going to bed to read and sleep, then trudged up the stairs, had a quick shower. Puking again halfway through, and got into bed, hoping to get some decent sleep for a change as her body was protesting to the lack of it she'd had recently. Any sleep she did have as interrupted when she woke suddenly at 5 a.m., only just making it to the bathroom in time. Charlie found her there an hour later as he woke to get ready for work. Leaving her in the bathroom with a glass of water. He left shortly later with a promise to check on her during his lunch break. Bella couldn't deny that this was absolutely the same stomach flu her friends had been experiencing. She was comforted by that knowledge, in a way, but also felt pretty miserable. When Charlie arrived back home, Bella was asleep on the bathroom floor. He smiled at her fondly before picking her up gently and tucking her into bed. Refilling the glass to leave on her bedside table. He'd had a call from the Newtons who informed him that Mike was feeling much better, so he had hoped Bella would also feel better in the morning. When she woke the next morning, Bella felt a little better. She forced herself into the shower and then downstairs, finding Charlie in his usual spot at the kitchen table, newspaper open on the table. Morning, Bells. Good to see you up and about, he said, turning to look at her. How are you feeling? A little better, Bella muttered, filling the kettle to make some tea, hoping that would help the remaining nausea. I still feel nauseous. Hopefully that passes soon, he muttered. Apparently Mike is already asking to be back at work. Which, I think you should give it until Monday to leave the house at all. Bella snorted. He should make the most of being able to avoid that place for a few days. I will, Bella said, adding sugar to her tea. I don't feel like going anywhere, anyways. Bella convinced Charlie that he was okay to go fishing with Harry, so he started getting ready while Bella mindlessly watched a cooking show in the living room. She knew she probably needed to eat, but didn't trust her uneasy stomach. It had been over 24 hours now. She was frustrated she still felt so nauseous. After Charlie left and she was sure she wasn't to spend the day on the bathroom floor again. Despite her nausea, she called Jacob. This time, Jacob was the one who answered, but his voice made it clear he wasn't over it. Hello. His voice was rough. Oh Jake. Bella groaned. You sound horrible. I feel horrible. I'm sorry I basically made you come with us. Hey, I'm glad I went. He whispered. This isn't your fault. You'll feel better soon, hopefully. I'm feeling fine this morning. She lied smoothly. You were sick. Yeah, I got it too. She replied. But I'm fine, now. I'm not sure I have the same thing. His voice trailed off, and Bella frowned. What's wrong with you? She asked. You don't have the stomach flu. No, he whispered. Every part of me hurts. What can I do? Can I bring you something? No, you can't come here. His voice was abrupt, suddenly stronger. Bella flinched slightly, his tone reminding her of Billy the other night. I've already been exposed to whatever you have. She pointed out and she heard a short sigh. I'll just call you when I can. He said. I have to go. The line disconnected and the nausea in Bella's stomach returned with strength and she found herself once again kneeling in front of the toilet, emptying her stomach. The next day, Monday, Bella decided she felt well enough to go back to school. Honestly, she wanted something to keep her mind off of Jacob and the anxiety that she felt for him. He hadn't called, but tried to reassure herself with the fact that it had only been a day since their last call. But sometimes her anxiety didn't listen. She had left biology once to puke, feeling better for a while until lunch where she had to excuse herself from the table, pointedly ignoring Lauren's comment of, so she's bulimic now, too. Angela had been worried, but Bella brushed her off, explaining she was fine. For the next few days, Bella's anxiety grew as Jacob didn't call, and nobody picked up the phone. Thursday night, she decided, invitation be damned, she would pay a visit after school. When she arrived at Jacob's house, it was empty. This triggered even more anxiety, since Bella considered whether Jacob was so sick he needed to go to the hospital. When she returned home, Charlie was on the phone to Harry. She mouthed to him desperately, to ask him to ask Harry about Jacob. He did, but there wasn't much response from Charlie other than the occasional, yeah, and, Rai said there's been some trouble with the phone lines, Charlie began, after he hung up the phone. Billy took Jake to the doc on the res, and it looks like he has mono. Billy has asked for no visitors. Bella resisted the urge to groan in frustration when he saw the pointed look on Charlie's face. She wanted to argue, but didn't want to push it either. She found herself upstairs online, Googling mono symptoms. They didn't seem to add up to Jacob's symptoms, but hoped she was just overthinking things. She decided to give it a week, then try to visit again next weekend. Friday, November 11, 2005. Friday morning she felt sick once again, and wondered how she was supposed to go a week without Jake's comforting presence. 1 week without him and she has regressed into a depression that is affecting her physically. Her strange, frightening dreams had taken an even darker turn, now featuring a young child which made no sense to her, but freaked her out enough that she didn't want to dwell on them too much to figure them out. Every time she did, the nausea came back with force. Charlie must have picked up on her mood, because he made a dig about it being her time of the month. Bella froze when he said that, biting her lip, tempted to snark back that she hadn't actually had a time of the month since early September, but knew that symptoms of her lingering depression would worry him, so she refrained from commenting. School was rough that day. She felt increasingly nauseous, skipping gym to hide in the nurse's office, as she had done many times. The nurse never snitched. Bella thinks she feels sorry for her. Besides, nobody really wanted to argue with the depressed, miserable teenage girl, and the gym coach was probably relieved that she had taken to skipping that class. She was It made the class easier for him and the other students. She used the nurse's bathroom before leaving, using her usual trick of running the sink's taps to hide the noise of her vomiting, and then left, relieved that next hour was lunch. She sat with her friends again, even though she was sure her presence was becoming even more unwanted as time went by. Mike was back, and was happy to converse with Bella. If you would call it that. Bella didn't really respond past the occasional nod of the head. With the loss of Jake in her life, even for such a short time, Bella was starting to feel every thing she'd been repressing creeping up on her again. She found herself staring at the empty table in the corner of the cafeteria, that nobody appeared to want to claim as theirs. She didn't know if it was the view of the empty, neglected table, or the tuna salad that Jess had just appeared with that hit her nostrils as soon as she peeled back the packaging, but she suddenly felt a wave of nausea take over and excused herself silently towards the bathroom. She was thankful the bathroom was empty, and entered a stall, losing the contents of her stomach. The regular puking made her throat burn, so painfully it almost made her forget about the burning hole in her chest which took her breath away. As she finished and took a few deep breaths, she heard the door to the bathroom open and stood up, flushing the toilet with her. Bella, she heard Angela call out. Bella relaxed. She didn't want anyone to follow her and witness her like this, but if there was anyone she could deal with right now, it was Angela. She unlocked the stall and stepped out, giving her a tight-lipped smile. Angela turned the lock on the door to the bathroom before turning to her. Are you okay? Bella turned on the taps to wash her hands and nodded. Yeah, thanks. Still nauseous from the stomach flu? She asked. Angela was a little worried, since herself and everyone else who had the virus felt perfectly fine after 24 hours. I don't know. Bella whispered honestly. She wished she knew why she kept throwing up. It was getting old. I just think I don't know, I'm stressed. Angela nodded thoughtfully. As Bella washed her hands, she studied Angela's face in the mirror, noticing how she seemed to want to say something, but kept closing her mouth as if she was changing her mind. This wasn't uncommon these days. People seemed to tread on eggshells around her, and most of the time she was actually grateful for it, but she found herself growing irritable by Angela's hesitance this time, which surprised herself a little. Angela was the last person she should feel irritated by. What? Bella asked, turning to face her. Angela pursed her lips and turned to lock the door to the bathroom behind her, making Bella frown. She turned back to Bella and tilted her head slightly. I've just noticed you seem to have been nauseous a lot, she said. Even before you got the flu. I guess. Bella shrugged, not knowing what she was getting at. I've been pretty anxious. Okay. I just wanted to try to help. Angela smiled. Have you tried anything? My mom used those sickness bands when she was pregnant with the twins. They worked really well. Maybe, Bella whispered, but something in Angela's statement had triggered a distant impossible thought. She tried to brush it off. She knew it was impossible, but Angela must have noticed. Bella wondered if she'd given that anecdote about her mother's pregnancy to prompt a conversation that wasn't necessary for Bella, and she resisted the urge to roll her eyes at Angela's innate curiosity. What is it? Bella looked at her, the question bringing her back to herself. She laughed under her breath. She was being ridiculous. Nothing. She scoffed again. It's nothing. Angela pursed her lips but said nothing as she watched Bella dry her hands under the hair dryer. Bella could feel her gaze on her and gave in. Bella started. He couldn't have kids, so that's not happening. Angela nodded and gave Bella a guilty smile. But Bella couldn't help but wonder. She had never considered the possibility. Not at all, since why would she? The only person she'd ever slept with was a vampire, for Christ's sake. Everyone had told her it couldn't happen. Vampires were frozen in time and unable to reproduce. But the small voice in her head told her, what if? The thought made the nausea return. Angela was watching her closely. Are you sure? I think so. I have no reason to think he was lying. Bella explained, trying to come up with a story that would relax not only Angela, but herself. Something to do with him being sick as a kid. Bella explained, the lie coming easily and her voice surprisingly steady considering who she was talking about. She repeated to herself internally that no, it's not possible. Okay, Angela said quietly. She became even more hesitant, but she wanted to help her friend. You've had a period though, right? Bella's throat closed up. Suddenly, she wasn't so sure about things. She hadn't had a period. But it was normal for her to go without when she was stressed, and every website she'd read online said the same thing. No, it was obviously stress. She pushed the thought aside, warily. No, Bella responded, her voice shaky. But you know how I've been. It might be a good idea to find out for sure. Angela questioned, her voice slightly hesitant, and Bella knew she hadn't the false confidence in Bella's response. Bella looked up at her and she felt her eyes fill up, once again without her permission. Her chest ached, the hole making itself known. Oh, I'm sorry, Bella. I shouldn't have. No, no, Bella started, wiping the tears quickly, then pulling the hand she used back to her chest. You're right, I really don't think I am. But you're right. Angela smiled sadly and pulled Bella in for a hug. Bella found herself relaxing in her arms, not realizing how tense her body was. Do you want me to help? Angela questioned, pulling back. I will. Bella sighed softly and wiped the tears from her cheeks. No, no, I'll figure it out. Okay, Angela replied. I'm here for you if you need, I don't know, help, or support, whatever you need. Bella nodded slightly, suddenly feeling overwhelmed and even more sick. She had planned to try to track down Jacob tomorrow, but suddenly she felt like that could wait. After some more reassuring words from Angela, who seemed to notice Bella's suddenly shell-shocked demeanor, they returned to the cafeteria, ignoring the inquiring eyes of their friends. She had convinced herself she wasn't worried, since she knew the possibility was so unlikely. A vampire causing pregnancy must be unheard of, but then again, she didn't really know. She had been told so many things by him and his family that were now proven to be lies, so this could just be another to add to the list. Later that afternoon, after a brief dinner with Charlie in which she felt too nauseous to eat anything once again, she was trying to work on some homework in her room but found her mind wandering. She had promised herself that by Saturday, if she hadn't heard from Jacob, she would call again. She wanted Jacob. She wanted his comforting words, needed him here to laugh at her and joke about her new silly anxieties about being possibly impregnated by a vampire. She couldn't talk about those things with him regardless, but she wished she could. It was suffocating having nobody to talk to about things completely truthfully, and her chest constricted when she realized who she really wanted to talk about this with. Alice. Sighing, she wrote a short email to Alice, writing down her fears, worries, and anxieties about the current predicament she found herself in. Pregnant? Probably not, but the fear and anxiety of it is taking over. Jacob. The crushing pain in her chest. The list was long and she suddenly found herself hunched over in the desk chair, crying with strong sobs she hadn't felt since being a child. It had been a while since she'd let herself have this rare show of emotion, and she was grateful nobody else was here to witness it. She held her hand against her mouth, not wanting Charlie alerted to her pain. It was bad enough he was the one who had to hear her screaming from the nightmares every night. After a while she forced herself into bed, not Eve. Removing the clothes she had worn all day. She was too exhausted and sad to care. The tears stung her eyes and her face felt sticky from the tears she'd eventually stopped attempting to wipe away. It felt odd, admitting she was sad. But she was really, really sad. Saturday, November 12, 2005. Bella could only hear her harsh breathing as she curled up on the bathroom floor, the sudden anxiety taking over her body as she tried to suck in breaths while squeezing the hole in her chest that made her feel like her body was crumbling. After work, she had driven to the next town to go to a pharmacy and pick up what she needed. Thankfully, the store had a self-checkout, so she didn't have to be met with judgmental eyes or risk being spotted by someone who recognized her. Once she got home, she unpacked the groceries she'd picked up on the way home, pointedly avoiding the boxes from the pharmacy until they were the only thing left on the counter. Thankfully, Charlie was fishing again this weekend, so she didn't have to worry about any intrusion or concern from him. So she stood, staring at the boxes, resisting the urge to throw them out because there was just no way. Instead, she grabbed the boxes and walked fast up the stairs, not allowing her time to even think about what she was about to do. She walked into the bathroom, shutting the door behind her, and sat on the closed toilet lid, looking at the boxes in her hands. She bought multiple types since she didn't know which ones were best. One claimed to be the most accurate, detecting pregnancy before a woman's period is even due. Despite not needing that, as she knew that if she was pregnant, she'd already be 2 months along, she chose that one, hoping she'd get clear answers as it promised. She tore the box open, throwing the empty box into the plastic CVS bag to dispose of secretly later, and gave the instructions a quick read. Deciding they seemed simple enough, she lifted the toilet lid and peed, making sure the test, which felt heavy in her hand, was placed appropriately. When she was done, she put the test on the counter and pointedly ignored it as she gathered the trash and placed it inside the CVS bag with the other unused tests, which she took into her bedroom and hid under her bed behind some storage boxes so Charlie wouldn't find them if he happened to look under. She then found herself sitting on the floor with her knees up against her chest. 5 minutes passed. Bella knew she needed to look. The instructions stated 5 minutes was the time to look. If you looked too early it wouldn't have processed. But too late and the test could be invalid. Taking a deep breath, she stood up, walking towards the bathroom at a speed that felt like slow motion. She turned the corner, seeing the test sat on the counter, face down so she couldn't see the result, and she moved to stand in front of it, moving her hand to touch it. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, her hands were shaking as they turned the test over. Suddenly her heart didn't sound like it was pounding anymore. She felt it drop. She could feel it in her stomach. The 2 lines on the test were bright, pink and very strong. Shit, Bella breathed, feeling her eyes well up, and suddenly the tears were coming down her face in force, unable to stop them. Fuck. What the fuck? She had never felt so many emotions in such a short minute. Shock, surprise, sadness, fear, anger. The positive emotions she found would come later, but for now she was too devastated for many reasons to make room for any. She felt a shaking hand reach down to her stomach, almost like she'd feel something there. She wasn't far along, she supposed, for there to be anything different. Swallowing, she grabbed the test and brought it into her bedroom, putting it in the side table drawer. For some reason not wanting to throw it away, despite the answer being incredibly clear from just one test. Feeling fidgety and not knowing what to do with herself, she threw herself on the bed, letting the sobs she'd been repressing take over her body again. She didn't know what to think, what to do. She was angry because she'd been told this couldn't happen. Angry because they had left her to do this alone, when she had no idea what she was dealing with. She still couldn't believe this was actually happening. And she was sad, again. She only became aware of her surroundings again later on in the day when Charlie arrived back home and knocked on her bedroom door. He opened the door slightly and peered in. "You okay, Bells?" he asked, sounding concerned. He walked into the room, taking in her appearance. Bella realized then she must have looked pretty awful. She couldn't tell him, though. No matter how much she wanted to share this burden with someone else, she couldn't. In fact, the thought of telling him made her suddenly realize just how detrimental this situation she's in is. "Bad day, I guess," Bella whispered. Charlie looked worried and Bella regretted her words. Charlie had only recently told her that he was happy she was doing better than she had been 2 months ago. She knew she had now ignited new worries. She tried to brush it off as sickness. "I'm okay. I just feel sick, still." Charlie gruffed, sitting on the bed beside her, putting one hand on her forehead. "You feel a little warm. Can I get you anything?" "No," she said, her eyes dropping slightly. "I'm okay." Charlie smiled sadly and rubbed her back. Bella's eyes continued to droop as he comforted her, and Bella's eyes welled up again behind her lids as she realized that the best thing she could do for Charlie was leave. Bella was scared, knowing that she knew nothing about this pregnancy, the pregnancy of a baby she wasn't sure would be born human, vampire, or something else entirely. It was safer for Charlie if he didn't know, and that means she'd have to leave him. It was the only way. For now, she accepted his comfort as she drifted to sleep, the exhaustion and shock of the day providing her with a dreamless, deep sleep. Sunday, November 13, 2005. Waking up rather suddenly, Bella groaned, her hand coming up to rub her eyes sleepily. She groggily recalled the events of yesterday evening, and woke up abruptly, one of her hands lowering instinctively to her stomach. She knew that realistically, she needed to see a doctor. She had been Pr. Pregnant for 2 months already with no medical care. But she also knew she didn't know what to expect with this pregnancy. Would seeing a human organ be an issue? She spent the next hour Googling symptoms of pregnancy on her phone. And after her research, concluded that her pregnancy felt like a usual pregnancy, but since she couldn't know for sure, she didn't want to consider calling any doctor yet. Which was worrying her, since she would have no way of knowing anything was wrong, no way to know that her baby was healthy, and no way to even deliver a baby safely. Deciding to brush those thoughts to the side for now before she began completely freaking out, she forced herself from her bed, dressing in a fresh outfit. She brushed her hair quickly, making herself look a little more presentable, at least. Then made a mental plan for the day. She wanted to deal with her Jacob problem. She needed Jake right now. While she still wasn't confident she should tell him about her predicament, she needed him back in her life. She missed him, missed his smile, and his warmth. It had been over a week since she'd last tried to call, so figured by now, she should be able to get some answers from him or Billy. Last night, while in the midst of anxious overthinking, she tried to think of things other than the growing embryo in her uterus, and she came to a horrifying realization. It was Sam Yulee. That was why Jacob was avoiding her. And why Jacob was acting strange. But while she heavily suspected he had something to do with it, whether it be instinct or paranoia, she didn't really know why. Jacob had been almost afraid of them. But they'd managed to convince his friend Embry to join the gang, so was it really that unlikely that they'd managed to convince Jacob, too? She didn't want to think about it too hard. But she had a strong feeling. Instead of sitting and dwelling, she opted to try to call Jacob again. It had been a full 7 days now since she had managed to catch him on the phone. And felt it unlikely that he was out of the house so early on a Sunday. Walking down the stairs to the kitchen, she found a note on the table from Charlie. He'd been called into work, which would make this easier for Bella. She had to save Jacob before she lost him to Sam completely. After staring at the phone on the wall for a long minute, she picked up the phone. She decided to call Charlie BEF. Or making any effort in contacting Jacob. She had a feeling something was going on in La Push with Sam and the others, and thought it best at least the police be aware of the possibility. Charlie picked up the station phone himself. Chief Swan. He answered. Dad, it's Bella. What's wrong? He questioned quickly. I'm worried about Jacob. Oh, why? He asked, surprise in his voice. I think something weird is going on down there. Jacob told me about how his friends started acting weird and strange stuff kept happening with them, and now he's acting the same way, and I'm scared and worried about him. Acting weird? How? He said seriously, and Bella sighed in relief, glad he was taking her seriously. First he was scared of them, and then he was avoiding me, and now I'm worried he's part of that gang down there. Sam's gang. Quote, Sam Yulee? Charlie asked in surprise. Yes, Bella, he started. Sam is a great kid. I should say great man, now. He's doing good with the youth on the reservation. I think you've got it wrong. Bells. Dad, I'm not sure it's like that. Jacob was scared of him. Bells, I'm sure it's okay. He's a kid, he was probably messing. I'm sure he's fine. Billy hasn't had any concerns. Jacob just can't be with you all the time, after all. This isn't about me, Dad. I insisted. Look, Bells, let Billy take care of Jacob. I think you're worrying for nothing. Charlie said, and Bella's shoulders slouched in defeat. It seems Sam has a hold on everyone. I have a lot on my plate right now. 2 tourists have gone missing off a trail. This wolf problem is getting out of hand. Bella frowned. She knew of this wolf problem, and something about it made her feel uneasy. She had no idea why. Charlie hadn't seemed too concerned, but recently there'd been enough he had been putting extra hours in after work. Hearing him concerned worried her. Oh, Bella whispered. Are you sure it was the wolves again? Seems so, he replied. We found tracks. Look, Bells, I really have to go. Don't worry about Jake, I'm sure it's nothing. Bella sighed. Okay, stay safe. Will do, he said before hanging up. Bella put the phone down, before staring at it for a full minute and picking it back up. Billy answered after only one ring, this time. Hello. Hi, Billy, she replied, trying to sound friendly, but it came out harsher than anticipated. Is Jacob there? Unsurprisingly, Billy's answer was negative. No, he's out with some friends. Oh, Bella started. Anyone I know? Quill. No, Billy answered. I don't think he's with Quill today. Embry. Bella questioned, testing the waters. Ah, yes, Billy replied, happily. Yes, he's with Embry. Bella's heart sank, but she had the confirmation she needed. Embry was one of them. Okay, well, can you have him call me when he comes home? Bella said, knowing he wouldn't. Of course, Billy said, followed shortly by the brief click of the phone as he hung up. Bella resisted the urge to roll her eyes, and put the phone back. Before thinking about it further, she grabbed her keys and got in her truck, driving all the way to La Push. She didn't remember most of the drive, but she soon found herself in front of Jacob's house. She wasn't sure what she was doing here, but she knew she needed answers from Jacob today. It didn't matter at this point what they were, she was just tired of uncertainties. She found herself anxious, so took out her phone and opened the Sudoku app that she'd found useful on sleepless nights to distract her from thinking too much. She'd only filled one line with the correct number. RS when a tap at her window made her jump. She turned, half expecting Billy there staring in annoyance, but she saw Jacob. What are you doing here, Bella? Jacob almost snarled, making Bella stare back at him in slight shock. Jacob had changed in the time since she'd last seen him. His once long hair was cut short, and his face had a hardness about it that aged him years. He didn't look like the young, careless boy that she had spent her time with. He looked scary, Bella noted. Jake, Bella whispered, garnering no response from the boy. Bella then realized he wasn't alone and there were 4 boys, no, 4 men, standing behind him with similar hard expressions on their faces. Bella resisted the urge to just reverse and drive away, feeling particularly vulnerable under their combined gazes. What do you want? Jake growled and Bella felt a lump arise in her throat. Maybe she'd made a mistake. I just want to talk to you, she said quietly. Go ahead. Alone, she replied sharply, eyeing the towering men. Jacob's face softened just the slightest amount, hardly noticeable to Bella's eyes. He turned and muttered something to the men behind him, who backed up and left him alone with Bella. She opened the car door and he invited himself in, forcing Bella to move up in the booth to give him enough space. He took up a lot more space than he had done just a few weeks ago. Let's get this over with, he said. Bella frowned, waiting. He knew what she wanted. It's not what you think. It's not what I thought. So what is it, then? Bella demanded. He clenched his jaw, turning his head to avoid eye contact. I can't tell you. I thought we were friends, Jacob. Bella whispered pathetically. I guess you don't need friends anymore. Now you have Sam. He turned his head quickly to look at Bella. This isn't Sam's fault. He's helping me as much as he can, he said, vaguely, and Bella shook her head slightly. Helping you? She questioned. Jacob, why can't you just tell me what happened? What did he do? Bella stepped forward, tears collecting in her eyes as she watched as he flinched away from her, holding his hands up defensively. Don't touch me, he said quietly, and Bella's chest constricted. Just weeks ago he was begging her to touch him, and the realization that she probably pushed him away by denying it. What did Sam do? Bella begged. The tears had escaped her eyes at this point, which she wiped away with her sleeve roughly, angry that they had betrayed her at a time she wanted to stay as collected as possible. Stop blaming Sam, he snapped. Who should I blame, then? Bella snapped back. You don't want to hear that, Jacob said, with a huffing laugh and dark smirk. No, I do, Bella insisted. If someone is to blame, I want to know. Fine, he said. If you want to blame someone, you should blame those filthy bloodsuckers you love so much. Bella's mouth dropped open as she processed his words. She didn't hear him right. She couldn't have. Her chest burned in ways that would have had her calling 911 if she wasn't already familiar with the twisting, jagged hole that existed where her heart should. I told you that you didn't want to hear it. I don't understand who you mean, Bella said shortly, her voice surprisingly strong considering her inner turmoil. You know who I mean. He rolled his eyes. You're not going to make me say it, are you? I don't enjoy hurting you, you know. Quote, I don't know who you mean, she repeated stubbornly. The Cullens, he said, looking at her face as he said their name. See, I know it hurts you. Bella shook her head, confused at why suddenly Jacob believed the stories Billy had recited to him. Last year he had insisted to her they were just simple stories. He seemed amused by the way Billy appeared to believe them. What changed? You're being ridiculous, Bella said quietly. Don't tell me you believe those stories, now. He knows more than I thought, Jacob replied, looking out of the truck window. Be serious, Jake, Bella said, shaking her head. She felt guilty because she knew he was right to believe those stories, but she couldn't understand why he suddenly was. Weird legends aside, Bella continued before he could respond. I don't see why you're blaming them for whatever is happening. They left 2 months ago. It was all set in motion. When they were here, what set in motion? What are you blaming them for? Jacob growled slightly under his breath and turned to Bella, getting closer to her face. The expression made Bella flinch back slightly as he spoke. For existing. Bella then saw the apparition of Edward, who appears as close as Jacob was to her face. She moved her eyes from Jacob's face to Edward's, her chest constricting and eyes welling up. In the midst of a verit thing happening for her in the past few weeks, she hadn't had time to put herself in a risky situation to see him. The fact that subconsciously she thought she was in some kind of danger right now scarred her and made her heart pound even harder in her chest. Jacob was mad, but he wasn't a danger. Don't push him, Edward cautioned, and Bella closed her eyes slightly, looking down to avoid Jacob's hard gaze. You're being ridiculous. Fine, Jacob replied, almost rolling his eyes. I won't argue with you. The damage is done already. What? She replied. I don't understand, Jacob. I have to go, he finalized. There's nothing more to say. What? There's plenty more. You haven't said anything, Bella argued, but Jacob ignored her protests. He opened the door, reaching his long legs out of the booth of the truck. Bella followed him, shuffling up towards the door. So that's it, you're just going back to Sam, she shouted towards him as he walked away. He didn't falter in his steps. If you want to see it that way, fine, he replied. Bella, we can't hang out anymore. Go home. What? She abruptly replied, now jumping from the booth to run an attempt to catch up with him as he walked away. She had to speed up to match his large strides. It's not you, it's me. I'm not good, he stated. We just can't, Bella. It's not you, it's me, Bella repeated in shock. Jacob, whatever Sam is telling you is wrong. You are good. You're so good. I was, he said. Not anymore. Nobody told me I was anything. I know what I am. We're friends, Jacob. That's what you are, she replied, tears leaking from her eyes now. You're my friend. I'm sorry, Bella, he said, and Bella's steps stopped and her shoulders dropped. She still had no answers, but she knew it was Sam. Sam had something in his head that made him feel unworthy of her friendship, of any friendship. She had an uncontrollable wave of anger that she felt in every limb of her body, and she had to refrain from screaming. After standing there for a few minutes, the house's door opened, but it was Billy who appeared in the doorway. I just called Charlie, Billy stated. I told him you're on your way home. His message was clear. Bella sighed, swallowed the lump in her throat and turned back to her truck, driving all the way home with tears streaming down her face. When she got home, she was met by Charlie, who was waiting on the porch. As she left the car, he walked out to meet her, putting his hand on her shoulder. Billy said you and Jacob had a fight and you were pretty upset. That's not really what happened. He smiled sadly and put his arm around her and helped her into the house. So, what happened? He said, pulling a blanket from the back of the couch to sit over Bella's shoulders. Sam, Lay told Jake he can't be my friend anymore. What? Charlie said, looking at her with narrowed eyes. Who said that? Jacob did, Bella said quietly. Not a complete truth, but it was the truth and Jacob hadn't denied it. She went upstairs to shower and change, and as she was drying her hair with a towel, she overheard Charlie on the phone. It sounded like Billy was blaming her for the fall apart of their friendship. Bella has made it clear that they were just friends, Charlie said. No, if that was the reason, why not just say that? Why didn't Jacob just say that? After a long pause, Charlie's voice got louder. What do you mean? He almost yelled. I don't know my daughter as well as I think I do. That's where you're wrong, Billy. No, if you think I am going to remind her about that. You are very wrong. She was just starting to feel better, and a huge part of that was because of your son. So if whatever is going on with him sends Bella back into that depression, then Jacob will have to answer to me. Bella turned towards the toilet bowl and vomited, whether in response to Charlie's words, or as a routine bout of what she now knew to be morning sickness, she didn't know. Billy was blaming her. She shook her head again and threw up the rest of her lunch into the toilet, tears falling down her face. Later that night, after a brief and slightly awkward dinner with Charlie, he still didn't know how to deal with an upset Bella, whether it be from boyfriends or just friends. She found herself lying on her bed, thinking about memories she'd previously not let herself think of. But the hole burned painfully already, so a little more pain didn't make much difference. Not today. She had drifted off into another nightmare, when suddenly she was awoken by a tapping at her window. Her heart jumped into her throat as she jumped awake, the comforter that was already askew from her dreams falling off her body onto the floor. Her hands shook as she walked towards the window, but she almost cried in relief when she heard the familiar voice. Bella, the husky voice shouted, sounding more familiar to her than it had done this morning. Open the window. Damn it. She shook the shock and opened the small window as wide as it would open, letting Jacob climb into her room. Once he had settled onto the wooden floor, he looked up at Bella with a wide grin. Bella wasn't sure how to respond. Her own lips threatened to turn upwards at the sight of his familiar wide smile, but his words from earlier today only played on repeat in her head, and suddenly she only felt angry. Get out, she said shortly, and pointed towards the window. Wait, no, he said, taking her hand and pulling it down so she was no longer pointing towards the exit. I just want to apologize. Well, I don't accept. Bella responded. Now you can go. Bella, please, Jacob said, and as they made eye contact, Bella softened slightly. His face still had the added hardness she'd noted earlier today, but his eyes held familiarity. Of her Jacob, not the version that had taken over his body this morning. Why? Bella said. I don't want apologies, Jake. I know, he said, pacing slightly, and Bella felt dizzy watching him, so sat at the end of her bed, watching him walk around the small room. I just couldn't leave things the way I did this afternoon. I shouldn't have said those things, Bella. I don't understand. Bella started. I don't understand anything. I know. Jacob sighed, eventually taking a seat on the bed next to her. I wish I could explain. I really do. Why? He sighed. Look, have you ever had a secret you couldn't tell anyone? He started, and Bella's thoughts instantly jumped to the Cullens. Not only the Cullens, but the growing child in her womb. Something that you couldn't tell your mom. Or Charlie, he continued, and Bella looked down, hoping she didn't look guilty. But still unsure where this was going. Or even me. I don't know why you came here, Jacob. Bella said, feeling a little defensive. I don't want riddles. I know. He repeated and sighed, again. The thing is, you already know. Bella shook her head, looking at him. What? She wondered if he still had a fever. He really wasn't making any real sense. What do you mean? Bella asked. I mean that you know. He repeated, and Bella sighed. If you guess what it is, I'd be off the hook. But I can't tell you. Bella shook her head to herself. She really didn't know how to respond. If she knew what was going on, she wouldn't have spent almost 2 weeks worrying and trying to call him. Do you remember the day we met on the beach, in La Push? Jacob started carefully, trying not to tell her outright. Of course. What did we do? We walked on the beach. Bella questioned. Ving no clue how any of this was relevant. And what did we talk about? I don't know. Bella started. You told me some Quileute legends. Scary stories. Bingo. He said, and Bella frowned. Think about all the stories. Bella pursed her lips slightly. Only one story he shared had mattered to her, and it was the only one she could recall right now. She looked at him and shrugged. You know this, he said, standing up. You know this. Jake, it's late. Bella said tiredly. Can we do this in the morning? He rolled his eyes slightly before sitting on the bed next to her again. Did you know? He asked, and Bella turned to him. Was it me who told you what he was? Bella turned away, her eyes focusing on a chip in the paint on the wall. She couldn't answer that. See, he prodded. See what I mean about loyalty? It's the same for me, but worse. Isn't there any way for you to get free? No. Jacob seemed to laugh. I'm in this for life. That makes no sense. You'll see, he replied, expanding no further. You just need to remember. Bella shook her head, knowing she wouldn't. The frustration was bubbling, the truth felt so close but so far from her. I have to go, he said, standing. They'll be looking for me. Quote, what? You're not supposed to see me. Bella almost growled. Not really, he replied. It's complicated. Yeah, Bella scoffed. They aren't bad people, Bella. Jacob said. I know I said bad things about them, but I was extremely misinformed. They are helping me. I know it doesn't seem that way considering how our friendship has ended up, but that's not their fault. Bella hummed, not believing him. Just try, Jacob said, turning to the window. Try to remember, please. Bella stood, walking to him. What are you doing? Charlie is asleep. Use the door. He chuckled, a laugh that made her heart swell since it sounded like her Jacob. The Jacob she had needed to see so much right now. Fine, fine, he smirked. Now please get some sleep. Remember, for me, I need you. He walked towards the door and disappeared through it silently. Bella laid back on her bed, head pulling apart every part of that interaction. She felt more confused than before. Her dreams that night were different, not the same usual night terrors she had become accustomed to in the past few months. She was in a forest, but not the usual forest she usually found herself stumbling around in. The smell reminded her La Push. This forest was in La Push, she was sure of it. Then suddenly, Jacob was there. He pulled her alongside him, almost tripping her over as she tried to keep up with him. His hair was long, again, as he urgently pulled her along. Jake, what's wrong? Run, he yelled. We have to run. Confused, but trusting, Bella continued her attempts to keep up with him. Then came to a sudden stop, almost causing Bella to trip with the sudden loss of movement. Jacob's eyes were wide, his nostrils flaring as Bella watched him whip his head around like he was searching for something. Someone. Suddenly, Jacob twitched. His whole body twitched. Again. Bella jumped back, both in fear and confusion as he fell to the ground, his body continuing its rhythmic twitching. Jacob, Bella screamed, but he was gone, and in his place was a large, no, monstrous, wolf. It towered over her, looking down at her intently. He was trying to tell her something. Bella, against all instincts, didn't run. Instead she started back, right into the familiar black-brown eyes. Jacob Black's eyes. She woke with a sudden jolt, a short scream escaping from her mouth before she managed to catch herself and replace the alarming sound with frantic gasps. She remembered now, remembered the stories that Jacob had told her. Jacob was a werewolf. Sam's group isn't a cult after all. It's a pack of werewolves. Her stomach lurched and she found herself crouched over the toilet for the second time tonight. What kind of place was this? Vampires, and now werewolves. Or was she just delusional and had been since she'd stepped on that plane in Phoenix? She was beginning to wonder. Finding herself back in bed, knowing she would be unable to sleep, she attempted to unpack everything she knew. Vampires were real. She was pregnant by a vampire. Werewolves were real. Jacob was a werewolf. Sleep somehow found her, and she welcomed the rare, dreamless sleep. Monday, November 14, 2005. Bella rolled over, clicking the snooze button on her alarm, before rolling back to land on her back, to stare up at the ceiling. After the revelations of last night, Bella hadn't slept much. And it wasn't for lack of trying. Jake, her son, he was a werewolf. The weight of that revelation had really set in overnight as she lay thinking. Was he, were they the creature that had been killing people in the forest? She didn't want to believe it, didn't want to believe that her Jake was even capable, but she knew from experience that sometimes these supernatural monsters weren't good. But this was Jake. She was having trouble equating the two. She needed to talk to him. Figure out what exactly he was, and why they were doing what they were doing. Running her hand over her face, she dragged herself into the bathroom to get ready. The movement made her stomach lurch, and she lost what was left in her stomach from dinner last night, thankfully making it to the toilet in time. After getting ready, she found Charlie sitting in the kitchen, catching up on the newspaper. Deciding to miss breakfast for now, Bella poured an orange juice and sat on the table by him. Kinda, Bella muttered, and he huffed in response. He probably heard that she'd had a nightmare last night, but since she hadn't mentioned it, Bella figured he hadn't heard Jacob, which was a relief. Look, Bells, Charlie started. About Jake. Bella shook her head before he could continue. It's fine, Dad. No, he said, putting the paper down. I don't know what the real reason for Jake's behavior is, but I know it's definitely not your fault. Don't let him make you think it is. I know, Bella whispered. Yesterday, she wouldn't have believed him. But now she knew, or at least, thought she knew, the truth. She knew it wasn't. It made sense that he'd push her away, but now she knew maybe things could go back to how they were, to an extent. But she needed answers, too. Good, he gruffed. I don't know what's gotten into Billy. He probably doesn't know what's going on with Jake either, Dad. Bella stated, although she did hold a level of disdain for Billy. She understood he had to cover. But she was angry that he'd tried to blame her for it, when he knew that it had nothing to do with her at all. His hatred for the Cullens seemed to have naturally extended to her, too, even though she wasn't one of them. Before her heart could squeeze painfully at the thought, she jumped up and grabbed her bag, saying goodbye to Charlie before getting in her truck and heading to school. For a short while, she had forgotten about her other predicament, the reality of which came crashing down on her after Angela greeted her as she hopped out of her truck. She gave Bella a gentle smile, and Bella almost wanted to turn, ignore her completely and pretend this wasn't her reality. But she also knew that it would probably feel good to tell someone. You okay? Angela asked as Bella reached her, and Bella nodded silently. Do you want to talk? You don't have to, of course. Bella smiled slightly at her kindness. If this had been Jess, or Lauren, they would have bullied her into telling them the results and then told everyone else in the school within the next minute. Knowing Angela wouldn't share the news, she found herself nodding. She did want to tell Angela. She trusted her, even though she still had no idea what she was going to do. Angela pointed out a quiet spot behind the cafeteria, and the two made their way over. Instead of stalling, Bella just blurted it out. Unexpectedly to herself, too. I am, Aang, she said simply, and Angela pulled her straight in for a hug. Bella sniffed as the tears came to her eyes, and she silently cursed herself for crying again. She wiped them away as Angela pulled back. Are you really okay? Angela asked again, and Bella shrugged. I don't know, she said honestly. I'm still in shock, I think. I'm sure, Angela replied. Have you told anyone? No, she responded. It's not like she really could. She wasn't even sure telling Angela was a good idea. Although, she figured people would probably realize eventually. If she was still in Forks by then, leaving was still an option she didn't want to dwell on too much, but she knew it was probably going to come to that. You have time to decide, Angela started, if there's anything I can do. Just let me know. I don't think I have much, honestly. It's been 2 months, I don't know how this stuff works. Bella said quietly. She really didn't. She did search the internet, which was telling her she would be almost into her second trimester already. She had been shocked that she hadn't realized sooner what all the symptoms were, but she had other things on her mind, she supposed. You could see a doctor. It'll probably help to know more, Angela suggested, and Bella just nodded, knowing she couldn't do that. That worried her. She knew she wasn't aborting the pregnancy. She didn't want to do that, and also wasn't sure it was even possible, but how was she supposed to know what to do? Would she end up giving birth alone somewhere, cold and scared? Pushing the thoughts from her head completely, she let Angela pull her in for a brief hug before they both made their way into school. The school day was long and tiresome. She had thrown up a few times, mostly at lunch after Lauren decided to eat tuna again. Bella had realized by now that fish appeared to be a trigger, which made cooking difficult since Charlie had been fishing so much recently. Once the final school bell rang, Bella's shoulders relaxed and she felt the relief of a long school day ending, but then the tension in her body returned when she made her way to her car, remembering her plan for the night. She had to go to La Push and tell Jacob she knew. If Jacob had been telling the truth last night, telling him meant things could return to some kind of normalcy. She'd have Jacob back in her life, at least. And she really needed him right now. She'd never felt more scared and alone. As she pulled up to the Blacks' house, she saw Jake's rabbit parked in the driveway. So he was probably home, thankfully. Billy answered the door before she even managed to knock. "Hi, Bella," he said shortly. "Where is he?" she asked, not offering a greeting. She hadn't forgotten what he had said to Charlie. "I need to talk to him." Quote. Billy sighed. "He's at the beach." Opting not to respond, Bella got back into her truck and drove down to La Push Beach. She couldn't see him when she arrived, but instead of driving back, she sat on the driftwood tree stranded on the sand, where Jacob and her had begun their first conversation all those months ago. She watched the water, as the sky turned gray, wrapping her arms across her stomach absent-mindedly. She noted internally that this was new, since she usually wrapped her arms around her chest subconsciously to protect herself. She didn't dwell on the meaning, and didn't have time to. "Bella," Jake said from behind her, making her jump slightly. Turning, in the darkness she could see his silhouette but not his face, and the image made her a little nervous. "Jake." He stepped forward, his silhouette turned into a clear image and he sat next to her on the tree. "I guess you, figured it out. I knew you could," he said. "Yeah, I remember the story now," she whispered in response. The silence fell between them, slightly awkward. He must have read something in her expression, because he was suddenly on his feet, and his voice defensive. "You should have just called," he said, kicking rocks underneath his feet as he spoke. "I wanted to talk to you, face to face," she answered. "Doing this over the phone would be ridiculous." "Yeah," he snorted. "This is much better." Quote. Bella shook her head, trying to make her expression as neutral as possible. "I just want to warn you," Bella started but Jake cut her off. "About the hunters. Yeah, we already know about them. They're not a problem." "How?" Bella frowned. "They have guns, Jake. We can take care of ourselves, Bella." He smirked. "They're more at risk than we are, out there." "Jake." Bella gasped. "You know these people. Charlie is out there. What if? What?" Jake hissed. "What more can we do, Bella?" Bella shook her head slightly, looking across the water again. Right now, he was human. Was this some kind of full moon only thing? If he stayed human, he wouldn't have to do those things, right? "Well, couldn't you try to not be a wolf?" she questioned and regretted it immediately when he responded, throwing his hand in the air, almost growling as he spoke. "You don't think I've tried?" he yelled. "And that won't help anything." "I don't see why not," Bella said, avoiding his gaze. He got close to her again, sitting next to her on the tree. "You know the thing that gets me angry," he started. "Really angry." Bella sighed and turned to him, but his harsh expression made her flinch instantly. "That," he continued. "You're such a hypocrite. You're terrified of me." "How does that make me a hypocrite?" "Apparently I'm not the right kind of monster for you," he said, looking at her in fury. "Sorry I can't be a bloodsucker, since they're so great." His body was shaking, and Bella could see him taking deep breaths, like he was trying to calm himself down. His hands shook as he ran them through his short hair. Suddenly Bella felt incredibly angry too. She didn't understand what he was trying to say, and she didn't feel it fair that he was comparing them to the Cullens, who had never hurt anyone in Forks. "Yeah, you're not," she shouted back. "I don't care what you are. It's what you do," she shouted, exasperated. "What's that supposed to even mean?" "You kill people, Jake," she stated. "Is that even necessary? The Cullens never did that. I don't understand why you do." He frowned and pulled back from Bella abruptly, his eyes wide in what seemed like confusion, to Bella. His shaking hands were in fists, like he was trying to stop them from moving. "Kill people?" he questioned. "Yeah," Bella said. "What did you think I meant?" "I thought you meant your disgust for wolves," he said, staring at Bella in disbelief. "What? I don't care that you're a wolf," she scoffed. "It just upsets me that you hurt people. They're innocent people, Jake. I can't ignore that and look the other way like it's not happening. I hear it every day from Charlie." So let me get this straight," he interrupted. "You hate me because I'm a murderer." "I don't hate you for it," Bella replied. "But yeah." He laughed now, and Bella looked at him in confusion. She didn't find any part of this amusing. She voiced as much and Jacob laughed harder, pulling her into a hug. Confusing her even further. So you really don't care that I am a werewolf? He questioned happily. No, she gasped, pushing him away and gasping in the air, since he'd cut it off in his bear-tight embrace. Well, I'm no killer, Bella. He smiled and took both her hands in his. Really? Bella said, relief pulsing through her as she processed. Of course not. Smiling in huge relief, Bella hugged him, standing on her toes to reach her arms around his neck. I understand why you thought what you did, he said, pulling away after stroking her hair. But we're not, Bella. I believe you. I'm sorry I called you a murderer, though, she replied, and he smiled in response. We're protectors, Bella, he started. We're trying to do our job. That's what we're doing out there, protecting people from. From what? Bella asked. What's out there? Was there another supernatural creature that Bella had yet to discover? The anxiety started rising in her stomach. Charlie was out there. You know. Bloodsuckers. Bella stared at him blankly before she understood. Then when reality set in, the blood drained from her face. There's vampires out there, she questioned. Who? We don't know them, he said, looking out into the water. We haven't seen them, but they're around. They're what's doing the killing. They aren't one of them, if that's what you're thinking. I wasn't, Bella replied honestly. They wouldn't do that. Jacob looked at her and resisted the urge to scoff at her comment. He didn't exactly think the same. I'm glad you know now, he said, smiling. And though it's still not the safest thing for you. Bella tilted her head. What do you mean? You said things would be okay if I figured it out, instead. There's more than one reason I wasn't supposed to tell you, Bella, he said, looking down at the rocks on the sand. I couldn't tell you our secret, but it's also not safe. If I get too mad, you could get hurt. Like when you were shaking, earlier, she questioned, remembering how his body had shook as they spoke. Yes, he responded. I messed up then. I should have a better hold of myself. I kept telling myself I couldn't get mad at you, but I was scared of losing you. Quote, what would happen? She questioned. If you got too mad, I'd turn into a wolf. He explained. You could get hurt, so you don't need a full moon. Jake laughed briefly and rolled his eyes. No, we don't. He smiled at her, then his expression turned more serious again as he looked into her eyes. Look, we're going to take care of the situation with the vampires. And we're keeping a close eye on Charlie and his team, all the time. We won't let anything happen to him. Bella smiled back. She still felt sick, and didn't know if it was the remaining nerves and angst or if it was still morning sickness. She wondered why they called it morning sickness. It was hardly just a morning event for her. You're good with weird, Jacob said suddenly, and it caught Bella off guard. The laugh escaping her loudly. Ha, she snorted. I guess so. You're not the only monster I've met. However, the reality of vampires being in Forks, vampires killing in Forks, was crashing down on Bella. She didn't think she'd know who it was. It felt like there was so much about their world that Edward had hidden from her, suddenly. The only other vampires she'd met had been the nomads. And James was gone. Laurent hadn't been an issue. Victoria Bella didn't remember much of her. Just that her eyes had felt like daggers as they'd left the baseball field. But she hadn't felt particularly threatened by her. Just James. But she wondered if maybe she did have something to do with it. I was wondering if they ever mentioned any other vampires. He asked. We have no idea what we're dealing with. And it doesn't feel like it's a coincidence that vampires show up here twice. Bella resisted the urge to smirk. She was beginning to wonder if he could read her mind. I dunno, Bella said. They didn't really share much. Jacob thought. It's not them. Bella defended, and Jake nodded, agreeing, since he knew it wasn't. I did meet others. One of them tried to kill me. Jake's head turned quickly to her face, his expression shock. He didn't, obviously, Bella said quickly. He wasn't good. They killed him. Edward killed him. The hole in her chest burned more as she spoke. So it's not him, Jacob finalized, putting his hand on Bella's back and rubbing, to attempt to comfort her, but also to calm himself down. No, Bella started, but he wasn't alone. He was with two others. Laurent, who I doubt is causing trouble here. He helped us. But James's made I guess out of the two she's the most likely. But I doubt it. Doesn't sound completely unlikely, Jacob said, thoughtfully. What else can you tell me about her? Not much. Bella started. I don't know why she'd come back here. It probably isn't her. Jacob pursed his lips, not as convinced as Bella. A vampire possibly looking for revenge. That was the most likely lead they'd had in a few weeks. It may be nothing, but it may be something. Is that why the Cullens left? Because someone tried to kill you? Jacob asked thoughtfully. No, Bella whispered, and Jacob didn't press. He knew how much it hurt her, and he didn't want to hurt her any more than he already had. He wanted to press for more information. But the minimal information she'd already provided was enough for now. He stood suddenly, pulling Bella to her feet. I know you don't think it's her, but this feels like important information. He started. I need to tell the others. Just in case it is her. Okay, Bella said, unsure. It's the only lead we've had, Bella. He explained. If there's a chance it's relevant. Bella nodded, and he pulled her back towards her truck. Where are we going? Bella asked. I'm not sure yet. He said. I'll have to call a meeting. Just wait her for a sec. Bella nodded and watched as he disappeared into the forest on the other side of the lot. A minute later, he returned, jogging back to the truck. Sorry, he said, and turned on the engine, the loud roar making Bella jump. Where did you go? Bella frowned. It's kinda weird, he admitted, and Bella tilted her head slightly, motioning for him to continue. They had established she was good with weird things. When we're wolves, we can hear each other. You can hear their thoughts? Bella asked, frowning. Yes, and they can hear me. Oh, she responded. So you just turned into a wolf, to talk to Sam? Yeah, he nodded, and Bella realized he seemed embarrassed. I thought that would bother you. No, Bella said, turning back to look out of the windshield as he drove the truck from the lot. Not the only person I've met who could do that. Really? You mean your bloodsuckers? I wish you wouldn't call them that. Okay, the Cullens. He laughed. Not all of them, Bella said, pulling one arm around her torso. Just Edward. Quote, I thought it was a myth that some vampires had extra stuff. He responded, surprised. I'm starting to think most myths are based on some kind of truth. Bella muttered, mostly to herself, but Jacob heard and laughed loudly. You're probably right, he laughed. Did they know you're bringing me? Jacob faltered as he turned the wheel, driving the truck to RDS, the place where they'd once ridden their bikes together. No, he said shortly. I kept it short so they wouldn't know I was with you. Sam wouldn't have let me bring you. Oh, she responded. They're going to be angry I'm with you. Right, maybe I shouldn't. No, I'm making the call. He said. They can be angry at me. But you know a lot that can help us. Like we had no idea vampires actually did have extra gifts. I suppose. Bella said quietly. She wasn't sure how useful she could be when speaking about them made her want to curl up and cry. He stopped the truck then, parking up on the side of the dirt road. You're still pretty unhappy, aren't you? He questioned, and Bella resisted the urge to flinch. She was. But more than unhappy, she was terrified of what this all meant. And terrified of the pregnancy that he still remained unaware of. She supposed he would have to tell him eventually, but she was afraid that she'd lose him over it. Not trusting her voice then, she nodded. Did you ever think that maybe you'd be better off? Bella flinched. No, 'cause he wasn't the best. Jake, Bella interrupted. Can we please not talk about this? Okay, he said, looking out towards the road. I'm sorry, it's okay. Bella sighed. It would be nice to finally be able to talk to someone about it, if I could. Bella wished she could. She wanted to share the burden. Jake nodded sadly in response. They sat in silence for the next few moments until Jacob straightened up and opened the door of the cab. They're here, let's go. Bella hesitated. Are you sure? She asked as she opened the door slowly. Maybe I shouldn't be here. They'll cope. He smirked, and Bella sighed, removing herself from the cab and moving to stand next to Jacob, watching as they came into view. Bella shuddered slightly and hid half behind Jacob, who took her hand in his, squeezing slightly. They came out of the forest, and Bella noticed how much they looked alike. They looked like brothers, moving in sync to stand on the other side of the road from her and Jacob. Their expressions were cautious, until they all laid eyes on Bella, close to Jacob's side, and they all turned furious. "What have you done, Jacob?" Sam demanded, but before Jacob could respond, another one of the boys, one Bella didn't recognize, pushed past him to move closer. "What the hell are you thinking? Why can't you just follow the rules, Jacob?" he yelled. "We all did. She can help, Paul," Jacob said, his voice remaining steady despite his growing anger. "She can help," he said. "Help who? She'll help the leeches, sure. I'm really sure the leech lover really wants to help us." "Don't talk about her like that." Jacob snarled and pulled Bella's hand, pulling her even more behind him. Bella remained relatively unfazed. This had been what she expected. "Relax, Paul," Sam stated. In response, Paul glared strongly and harshly at Bella, making her shiver. Jacob moved in front of Bella then, blocking her from his view entirely. She couldn't see anymore. "Ha! Protect her, go on then." She heard Paul shout and Jacob snarled and crouched slightly, opening her view to the scene. Paul was shuddering. No, he was convulsing. He threw his head back, a growl releasing from his mouth, and Bella gasped, realizing what was happening. Suddenly, he lurched forward, gray-silvery fur exploding from his body, transforming into a shape somehow so much larger than the already large teenage boy. On all fours, crouched and ready to spring at his target, which happened to be Bella. Before she could process what was happening, Jacob left the space in front of her, running towards the wolf. Suddenly, Jacob was also gone, exploding into a mass of russet fur into a beast even larger than the one that had appeared in Paul's place. Suddenly, Bella couldn't make sense of anything. The beasts blurred together into a mass of gray and russet brown fur as they tumbled and snapped at each other. "Jake!" Bella yelled, not sure whether he'd even hear her. "Stay where you are." Sam spoke to her and she complied. She watched in shock and worry as she watched the two fight, snapping for each other's throats. Bella was slightly comforted by the fact Jacob seemed to have the upper hand, being bigger than Paul in his wolf form. "Take her to Emily's," Sam yelled, chasing after the wolves who had now taken their battle into the forest, disappearing into the trees. The growling was almost silent now, as they had escaped far enough from the dirt road. Bella was pulled from her shock by a laugh, and she turned to see Mbry picking up remains of clothing from the road. "I don't think Jacob can afford another pair, now," he laughed, picking up the remains of a Converse sneaker. "There's really no use." The other boy, Jared, Bella remembered, laughed too. Before turning to Bella, "You're not gonna puke or anything, are you?" he asked. "I don't think so," she responded, feeling unsure, because she has become good friends with vomiting in the past few weeks. "Jake should have warned us. At least Paul would have had time to chill out," Embry said as he picked up the last of the clothing, walking over to where Bella and Jared stood. "Well, Wolf is out of the bag now, I guess," Jared replied, and Bella felt the urge to roll her eyes. "Aren't you worried about them, at all?" Bella asked, looking up at them, and they looked at her blankly. "Why?" Embry frowned. "They could hurt each other." "Ha!" Jared guffawed. "I hope Paul gets a mouthful of him, teach him a lesson." Bella blanched. "Nah. Did you see Jake?" Embry responded. "He's a natural. I doubt Paul will leave a mark." Bella shook her head slightly, trying to comfort herself with their lack of concern, but found herself glancing at the forest edge, waiting for them to return, hopefully unscathed. "Let's go see Emily, then," Jared said. "You don't look good to drive." Bella shrugged. "I can drive us," Embry said, and Bella nodded, throwing him the keys. They walked towards the truck, Embry opening the passenger side for Bella and Jared. Bella sat between the two, feeling slightly comforted by their warmth. Embry drove the truck back towards La Push. "So how did Jake even get around it?" Embry asked. "Around what? He's not even supposed to be able to tell anyone what we are. So how did he manage it?" "Oh," Bella responded. "He never did. I just guessed right." "Huh," Jared said thoughtfully. "Never thought that would work." "Where are we going?" Bella asked, changing the subject. "Emily's house. She's Sam's fiancé. They'll meet us there AF. They've dressed and chilled out a little," Jared replied. Embry drove down the highway for a few minutes before turning off onto a dirt road, at the end of which was a small house, painted yellow with a blue door. It looked inviting, welcoming. The cheerful appearance almost made Bella want to smile, despite the current situation. Embry opened the truck door and smiled, inhaling. Emily's cooking. Jared jumped out then and headed for the door, opening it and walking in like they owned the place themselves. Bella followed more hesitantly, feeling like an uninvited guest, but entered the house behind them anyway. The interior of the home was just as cheerful as the outside, yellow walls covered in knickknacks and ornaments, some recognizable as Quileute symbols from tales she'd heard over the years from Charlie and Billy when she was a kid. Moving her eyes from the decor in the room, which was mostly kitchen, she laid her eyes on the woman in the room who was placing a basket of muffins onto the kitchen table. Laughing slightly as Jared and Embry both pounced on them, grabbing one in each hand. As Emily stood straight, Bella noticed the right side of her face was scarred from top to bottom. 3 thick lines that had long healed, but still very vivid. She moved her eyes to the left side of her face, feeling like she was staring too long. "Oh," Emily said suddenly, surprised. "Who is this?" "Bella Swan," Embry replied, shrugging, his mouth full of muffin. "Ah," Emily smiled. "Of course, Jacob found a way around. So, you're the vampire girl." "I guess so," Bella questioned, and Emily laughed and gestured to the spare seat at the kitchen table. Bella relaxed slightly and took a seat. "So you're the wolf girl." "You could say so," Emily said, laughing again. Bella sat back, and nibbled at the muffin that Emily had offered her, watching as they fell into banter like a family. While Bella was usually uncomfortable around new people, she found Emily's kitchen comforting. Emily was mixing eggs at the counter and Bella walked up to her, and asked if she could help with cooking at all. "Oh, no dear," she responded. "You're the guest, you sit." Bella smiled and took a seat again on the chair closest to her. "I imagine today was a shock, for you?" Emily questioned and Bella shrugged. "A little," Bella replied, "but not really. I just hope they aren't hurt." "Oh, Paul has a quick temper, unfortunately." She tutted, and rolled her right arm sleeve up as she continued to stir and Bella noticed the scars from her face extended down her arm. She wondered how she got them. But then remembered what Jake had said. Being around wolves did have risks, this must be one of them. "They'll be fine, I promise." Bella smiled and sighed softly. She noticed it was 5:50, meaning Charlie would be home from work soon. Pulling out her phone she dropped him a text, telling him simply that she was with Jake, and she was okay, that they both were. She told him to order pizza for dinner. She didn't know if she'd be back anytime soon. "So you and Sam are engaged?" Bella asked, wanting to turn the conversation away from her. "Yes," Emily smiled, "as of a few weeks ago." "Congratulations," Bella said, her heart twinging slightly. Marriage wasn't something she desired, but she could tell how much Emily loved Sam by the way her eyes lit up, and she envied that she had that. "Thank you," Emily said, turning slightly after finishing mixing the eggs. "I've always wanted a family. I hope in a few years we'll have our own children running around this home. I enjoy my work, but I want to be a stay-at-home mom." Bella was about to ask what her job was, when the front door opened and Sam stepped through. "Emily," he said simply, and there was so much love in his voice that Bella felt embarrassed and felt like she was intruding on their moment. She watched as he walked up to her, pulling her into his arms naturally and kissed her cheek before planting his lips on hers. "Ah," Jared complained. "I'm eating, please." Sam chuckled and pulled away. Bella felt sick again. Whether it was the muffin on an empty stomach, the hole in her chest burning once again, or more pregnancy nausea, she didn't know. But she wanted to disappear, and suddenly felt the urge to go home. Thankfully then, Jacob and Paul came through the door and Bella watched in surprise as they walked into the room, laughing. They both appeared to be in one piece, and Bella felt the tension in her shoulders release. "Hey, Bella," he said and pulled her in for a quick embrace. "You good?" Bella nodded quickly, offering him a small smile. "I'm fine." He smiled apologetically. He hadn't meant for their meeting to go that way, at all. Reminding himself why he was here, he turned to the rest of the pack. "So, back to the reason I called y'all here." They all turned to look at him, waiting. "It could be something, could be nothing." He started. "But Bella knows of some vamps who were around, who aren't the Cullens." They all glanced at Bella slightly, who was looking down at the table silently. One of them tried to hurt Bella. He snarled out, "The Cullens killed him. He had a mate." "You think it's the mate?" Sam questioned, and Bella looked up at him. "Bella isn't convinced," Jacob said, "and I'm not 100% sure, but it's the only lead we've had. I just don't know why she'd come back." "It's something," Jared said, shrugging. "The prints we found were small. Could be a female's foot." Bella looked up at him. They'd found tracks. Jacob hadn't told her this. She frowned and looked up at him, and he shrugged, telling her it had slipped his mind. "Like I said, I don't know if it is her. But the odds seem high to me," Jacob said, moving to sit next to Bella, grabbing a muffin from the basket. "To me, too," Embry agreed, and Bella frowned. She wasn't sure why she'd be back. Maybe she dropped in to find the Cullens. But why would she stay and murder people if they aren't here? She would have noticed quickly that they weren't. "If anything else comes up, you'll let us know, right?" Sam said, looking between Bella and Jake. Bella frowned. What did he think would come up? She hadn't seen a vampire in months. Despite her confusion, she nodded. "We'll find the bloodsucker, Bella," Jared said, picking up another muffin. "Don't worry. Honestly, Bella, maybe you should spend more time in La Push from now on," Jacob said, frowning slightly. "If this vampire does know you, it might be safer." "Okay, I guess," Bella replied. She didn't oppose spending more time here. She felt comfortable, and now things were back on track with Jake. She definitely felt happy here, as well as safe. "But what about Charlie? We can increase the patrols in Forks, too. Have someone down there," Sam replied, and Bella thanked him quietly. "You'll all be careful though, right?" Bella questions, and they laughed, minus Emily, who caught Bella's eye and offered her a sad smile. The boys spent the next few hours reassuring Bella that they would be safe, and would be fine. She wasn't convinced, but their confidence was definitely comforting. They ate dinner together, Bella being convinced to stay by. Emily, who was more than happy to accommodate. She wasn't too hungry, so picked at the meal a little before explaining to Emily she just felt a bit queasy, still. Emily smiled and nodded, taking the plate. "I understand, don't worry," she said. "After the day you have had, I'm not surprised." Bella smiled slightly, knowing the reason for her nausea wasn't what she thought. Excusing herself to the bathroom, which Emily guided her to, she managed to make it there in time before what little she had eaten made its way from her stomach. Thankfully, she had mastered vomiting fairly quietly, and had hoped that none of them had noticed. Even if they had, they would probably put it down to shock. It was dark by the time Bella excused herself to go home, and Jake followed her to her truck, offering to drive her home. As he saw how tired she had become, they both stayed silent as he drove back along the highway towards Forks. By the time they pulled up in front of her house, Bella had almost fallen asleep. Jake turned off the truck but didn't make any effort to move. "I'm sorry about today," Jake started. "That's not how I wanted things to go." "It's okay," Bella said, adjusting herself to sit up straight. "I'm fine." "No, you're not," Jake said, and Bella frowned. She was. "At least about what happened today. It made you sick." "Oh, so they had heard." Bella sighed. "That wasn't because of that," she said, hoping he didn't press further. "You sure?" he questioned, frowning. "'Cause I'll understand if it was." "It wasn't," she said. "I promise." "Okay," he responded. "You okay, though?" Bella inhaled, then let out a deep breath. "Yeah." He wasn't convinced, but wished her good night anyway, before leaving the truck cab and disappearing into the forest, leaving Bella alone. Although she suspected she wasn't really alone. She took a few deep breaths, the day wearing on her, before heading into the house. "Bells," Charlie yelled from the living room as she entered. "Yeah, Dad," she responded, hanging up her jacket and walking through to him. "So," he started, "you and Jake are good again. I thought Jacob was part of a gang." "We made up." "Yeah," she said, sitting next to him on the couch. "And it was a misunderstanding. I guess. I met Sam and Emily, and you're right, they're good people." "They are," he said, side-eyeing Bella and her sudden change of heart, but he wasn't going to question it too much. Things are easier when she and Jacob are friends. Blank, _, Tuesday, November 15, 2005, The next day, Bella felt even worse in the morning. Charlie had noticed, too, and convinced her to stay home from school. He left her in bed, as she struggled to stay awake. She didn't know why she was so tired. Was this normal? After waking up for the 5th time since waking up at her alarm at 6 a.m. She rolled over and grabbed her phone. A quick Google told her tiredness was very normal, especially in the first trimester. But her calculations told her she was almost out of her first trimester. So surely she should be feeling less tired by now. Not more. She placed the phone back on the table with a groan, deciding getting up and moving around would do better than staying in bed and dozing all day. She would have forced herself to school if Charlie hadn't caught throwing up earlier. He just figured she was still having symptoms from the flu and Belle silently thanked him for being oblivious. Keeping herself busy, she decided to clean the kitchen, until the smell of the bleach she used to clean the sink made her feel even more nauseous. Giving in, she grabbed her English textbooks and opted to sit in the small backyard and study. She was ahead in most of her classes, given that she buried herself in any schoolwork as a distraction these days, but wanted to keep her mind busy. It failed, and she found her mind wandering, finding her hands around her torso. Not to keep herself together, but as a comfort. She was really trying not to think too much about the growing baby inside her, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. The idea of being a mom felt so foreign, but she knew she felt something for the baby already. It was confusing. She knew by now she didn't want to attempt an abortion, it didn't feel right. She felt protective. On top of everything else, she was pretty terrified. She'd never even held a baby before, how could she birth and raise one? And the fact she was going to have to do it all alone worried her more than she cared to admit. Telling Jacob was an option. But it almost felt like a betrayal, to tell him first. Which was also confusing for Bella. Edward didn't want her, or feel anything for her. But he was to be a father, and regardless of his feelings towards Bella, he deserved to know. She had tried to find someone from the family, but as expected any email bounced and all the Google searches she'd done for any variation of their names had come up empty. It really was like he'd never existed. Just like he'd promised. Wiping the sudden tears away, Bella sighed. The baby was something to hold on to, that proved to her that he did exist, but she felt him slipping away. It was that moment she made the decision to find the meadow. Her and Jacob had already made the map, the route set out clearly, so it wouldn't be hard for her to navigate alone. She felt tired, but not sick anymore. It was only 10 a.m. Charlie was working a long shift so wouldn't be home until late at night, and he'd called her in sick at work again, so she had time and plenty of it. She packed a bag with some snacks, should she need them, and water. And set off in her truck to find the beginning of the trial. Walking through the forest was tiring, made longer by being alone since Jacob was better at navigating than she was. The beginning of the route felt familiar, the memories tugging at her brain no matter how much she tried to push them away to keep her concentration. But by now the unfamiliarity of the route had her feeling uneasy. She didn't recognize any of the trees around her, and her stomach and heart both hurt at the realization. She needed to see it today, no matter how much she knew it was going to hurt. Frustrated with herself, she put the earbuds in her ears that she'd packed, and scrolled her phone, finding the audiobook she'd found of a biology textbook. Something boring, factual, and not at risk of triggering a more painful attack on her body, like some fiction does now. She didn't realize how much quicker she'd been moving, even though she still felt unsure of the route. That was until she came across an opening. So familiar it took her breath away. She didn't move through it straight away, taking a few seconds to look through the gap. It was definitely the place, she noticed as she stepped through hesitantly. It looked similar, despite most of the flowers being gone since it was November. It also didn't look as inviting without the sun shining through the break in the trees. But it was definitely the same place. With disappointment, she realized she hadn't found what she was searching for. She wasn't sure what that was, but the loss just felt somehow stronger. She dropped to her knees at the edge of the clearing, her arm across her torso. She sat there for a while, trying to get herself together. She didn't see any use in going further, but she still had to make her way back to her truck. She'd taken a few hours to get here, so definitely had an even longer journey back now. She kept her eyes towards the ground, looking at her shoes that were almost hidden in the overgrown grass, as she stood up, trying to avoid looking at the clearing for any longer than needed. Turning slightly, she took one last look. At that moment, a figure appeared from the other side of the clearing. She felt a range of emotions as the figure stepped out properly, revealing their full form to her. Surprise, shock, fear, then finally, recognition. Tuesday, November 15, 2005 continued. Laurent, Bella called, and his eyes met hers. Bella, he responded, suddenly only a foot away from her. She took a step back involuntarily at the appearance of his eyes. You remember, she said, quietly. I do, he said, narrowing his eyes. I did not expect to see you here. Bella frowned. I do live here, she stated, and he looked at her curiously. I thought you went to Alaska. I did, you're correct. He replied. I just did not expect to see you. I found the Cullen home empty, so I thought maybe they'd moved on. Oh, Bella responded, the hole burning slightly in her chest. They did, you're right. I'm surprised they left you behind, Laurent mused thoughtfully. Bella wasn't sure how to respond. She didn't feel surprised, not anymore. It had been made clear to her that she didn't belong. But instinct was telling her that she shouldn't let Laurent know this. Did they visit often? Laurent asked. Lie. Bella heard, the apparition of Edward appearing a second after the words. She flinched. His arrival sudden. They do, yes. Bella started, the lie making her throat close up. She wasn't good at this. I'll have to let Carlisle know you stopped by. I probably shouldn't tell Edward, though. Bella added, choking slightly on his name. She silently hoped he hadn't noticed. He can be pretty protective, I'm sure you remember. He's still angry about the James thing. Ah, yes, he nodded. Is he really? Quote, lie better. She heard and her gaze moved to Edward's blurry face. Yeah, he is, she said shortly. She was beginning to panic, and she was sure that Laurent had noticed. In the few minutes since she'd first seen Laurent enter the clearing, she had made the realization that his appearance meant he probably did have something to do with the recent vampire appearances. But she wasn't convinced. Laurent sounded like he hadn't been here for long. How is Alaska? She asked. Carlisle said you were staying with the Denali coven. She scrambled to keep the conversation off of her. And off of the Cullens. If she pretended she wasn't as anxious as she felt, maybe he'd leave her be and get back to what he was doing. It is different, he mused. I like the family, especially Irina. She is lovely. It is bizarre, staying in one place, but I have enjoyed the company. The restrictions are interesting. Difficult. I sometimes cheat, you see. Bella took a step back, subconsciously. The Cullens said it can be hard. She said shakily, fighting the urge to take another step back to put more distance between them. Stay still, she heard, and she froze in place, listening to his orders. Victoria found me, you know, he said, moving slightly closer to Bella who was fighting hard not to move back. She eyed the forest, wishing she was a vampire too so she could run far away from him. But she had no real chance. Oh, she said shortly, how is she? She attempted to sound casual, but her voice shook, and Laurent definitely noticed. He tilted his head and smiled slightly. I'm actually here as a favor to her, he said, taking a step forward. Bella took a deep breath, her body shaking. Oh, Bella repeated dumbly, her instincts telling her this was all wrong. Yes, he said, then hummed. She will be very disappointed about this. About what? About me killing you, he answered, his voice smooth and casual. This time she didn't keep up the pretense of being calm. She staggered backwards, putting a few more feet between them that he had previously closed, and she stared to the space next to Laurent where the apparition stood, glaring at the vampire who had just threatened her life. She wanted to do that herself, you see, he said, waving his hand. She isn't fond of you. Me, Bella squeaked. Yes, he started. Since Edward killed her mate, she figured it more appropriate to kill his. She asked me to come and see how things were so she could plan, but I really didn't imagine you would be so exposed. If he cares about you as much as Victoria thinks, he really wouldn't have left you this unprotected. Bella flinched, the hole tearing painfully. Why not wait for her? Bella said quietly, begging. She'll be angry either way. Laurent shrugged. Plus, I was in the middle of hunting. It's only fitting I quench this thirst with what is available right here. Threaten him. The voice echoed. They'll know it was you. Bella stuttered. He will. I'm not sure about that. He smirked. The rain will wash away any scent, and they won't find your body. Please, don't. Bella begged. I'm doing you a favor, really. He said, closing the gap between them completely, his hand touching the side of her face, and she grimaced. You are. Bella said quietly, shaking. Oh yes, he replied. Victoria had plans. I'll be quick, it will be painless. I'll lie to Victoria about that, to keep her happy, of course. Bella stared up at him in horror as he sniffed as the breeze blew her hair towards his face. Mouthwatering, he said, lowering his head to her neck. Bella didn't close her eyes, instead she did what she'd always feared doing, and locked eyes with the image of Edward that still stood behind Laurent. He was growling furiously and saying something, but she couldn't make sense of the words. Laurent inhaled again, before suddenly freezing, his head raising from its spot close to her neck. She watched as he titled his head, looking like he was listening intently. Assuming he'd heard something from the forests, Bella turned her gaze to the trees, searching them but finding nothing. Instead of turning his head to look in that direction too, he crouched, his face close to Bella's stomach. Tu es avec un enfant, he said, his head tilting curiously. Fascinating. He stood straight again, and Bella realized that he somehow knew she was pregnant. She could only guess how, had he heard a heartbeat. Her lip quivered slightly as she watched Laurent thoughtfully stare back at her. Intriguing, he mused. But where were we? This time as he lowered his face to hers, he was interrupted again when his nose picked up the scent. His head whipped to the left, making Bella jump and fall backward slightly. I don't believe it, she heard, and when she followed his gaze, she could have cried out with relief. The wolves stood tall, appearing from the trees in a formation similar to how they stood while in human form. Laurent's hand left her head and he began retreating. Firstly slowly as he looked at the pack, then he was a blur, running into the forest in the opposite direction of the wolves. Bella's heart felt like it was in her throat as she watched the wolves run, somehow even faster than Laurent, in the same direction, snarls and growls loud enough to make her want to cover her ears. No, she yelled abruptly. She didn't want them hurt, and despite all of their attempts at convincing her they could handle vampires, she was still incredibly anxious about them pursuing one. She just hadn't imagined it happening quite this soon. She thought she was alone in the clearing, but a figure emerged from the side the wolves had come from. Embry, she recognized. He was running towards her, pulling some shorts up his legs as he ran. With difficulty. Bella, he exclaimed as he got closer. Are you okay? Bella nodded, still in shock at what happened. But she was alive. Just minutes ago she had been facing death. He didn't hurt you, did he? He said, helping Bella to her feet. She hadn't noticed she'd fallen to her knees at some point in the last few minutes. No, she said quietly. He was about to. Embry sighed and pulled her in for a hug, shocking her slightly. She didn't know Embry all that well, but she could feel his relief, and the hug was comforting, his warmth seeping through the layers she was wearing. I'm so glad we got here in time, he said, pulling away. We caught the scent, but it was only as we got closer we realized we could smell yours, too. You can smell my scent? Bella asked, grimacing. Yeah, everyone has one. He shrugged. Bella turned back, looking to the forest where Laurent and the wolves had retreated. They'll get him, it'll be okay. Embry reassured me. Will they be? Bella muttered and he smirked. Still worried about us, eh? He rolled his eyes playfully, but Bella could tell he was also being sincere in trying to comfort her. Don't worry, I'll be surprised if they didn't already have him. Come on, I'll take you to Emily's for now. Bella gave the forest another glance before nodding and following him out of the clearing. Embry explained that Sam had been driving when Jake called him, telling him they'd caught a scent. He'd ditched the car on the highway, only a few miles from the clearing, so they just had to make it there. Sounds dumb, but this would be quicker if I could just give you a piggyback, he said, almost shyly. Bella resisted the urge to scoff, but she knew it would be quicker and easier for them both if he just ran with them. Sure, she said, smiling softly. He easily positioned her on his back, and began running. He was definitely strong, Bella noted, as he didn't seem fazed by her weight and the added weight of her full backpack. And he was quick, not supernatural quick, but for a human, you'd think he was an Olympic runner. We're much faster while phased, as you have seen. Embry spoke, his voice not affected by his speed. But I didn't think you'd want to sit on my back while I'm not exactly human, and going that fast. Bella chuckled, but honestly the thought wasn't completely terrifying. She had experienced such speeds before. They reached the car in about 30 minutes, hours shorter than she would have done had they walked it. They got into the vehicle and Embry drove the route she now recognized as the route to Emily's house. Are you still doing okay? I think so, Bella said shakily. She thinks the reality of what happened today was really setting in. She almost died. It's okay if you're not, he said. That was pretty close. Jake was right, she said abruptly, and he turned to look at her face for a moment before looking back at the road. Victoria, the one who he thinks is in town. She definitely has something to do with things. Oh, Embry said. So who was he? He was the other one, in that coven. She said. He had helped us, but he said he came as a favor to Victoria to check in on me. Quote, he did a bad job at that. Embry scoffed and Bella smiled slightly. He did. They continued the rest of the journey in silence, both leaving the car as soon as the car pulled up to Emily's small house. Bella felt less like an intruder this time, somehow. Embry knocked this time, telling Bella that Emily didn't know what had happened at all. When she answered, she looked at them in surprise. Then her expression turned to concern. Sam's okay, Embry said, and Emily moved to let them both inside, closing the door behind them. Bella didn't wait for an invitation this time to sit, simply because she didn't think her shaky legs were going to hold her up for much longer, and she didn't want to embarrass herself by fainting in front of these two people, who were practically still strangers to her. What happened? Emily demanded, turning to boil some water in the kettle. We caught a scent, and followed the trail, Embry explained, finding a bag of chips in the cupboard and throwing himself on a chair at the table, opposite Bella. Found the leech putting his lips to Bella's neck. Emily gasped, dropping the mug she was holding. Are you okay? She said, moving towards Bella. And she surprised her by pulling her into her arms. Bella noted that while she wasn't supernaturally warm like her fiancé and his pack, her embrace felt warm and comforting. I'm fine, she said shakily, and she knew she hadn't convinced anybody. Emily pulled away and stroked her cheek slightly, turning back to her task. I'll make you some tea, she said, and Bella smiled in thanks. Not trusting her voice, Embry finished the chips loudly, crunching the packet and tossing it into the trash can. Embry, Emily said as she sat 2 mugs of tea on the table. You know I get anxious when Sam is out there. Could you check on them? I'm sure Bella would appreciate it too. Embry nodded his head and stood up, the chair scraping noisily on the wooden floor. He jogged out the front door, leaving Emily and Bella to sit in silence. Are you sure you're okay? Emily asked, and Bella looked at her. She knew she wasn't okay, the realization that Jacob was completely correct, and that the reality was somehow even worse than Jacob had imagined. I don't know, Bella replied simply. Emily just smiled sadly, rubbing Bella's arm for a moment before returning her hands to her mug, warming her hands with the heat from the tea. I can't imagine how terrifying that was for you. Emily sighed, shaking her head. Terrifying, yes, but the intense loss she'd felt knowing her child would die along with her had been even more all-encompassing for Bella. She knew now even more than ever that she needed to get her shit together in regards to her current situation. Whether that meant leaving and doing it alone, or finding someone who could help her. Her thoughts were interrupted by Embry coming into the room, looking somewhat somber. Bella straightened up at his expression, suddenly on edge. What had he been told? They got him, he said shortly, sitting back on the chair he'd left vacant previously. They're on their way here. Bella let out the breath she was holding, her body relaxing in relief. What's wrong, then? Emily questioned, still worried. I just wish I was there, Embry said, pouting, and Emily rolled her eyes, hitting him with the towel she had placed on the table. Bella was still so shocked at how casually they spoke about these things. They just killed a vampire and he's jealous he wasn't there to do it. The relief was intense, though. She had worried that Laurent would get back to Victoria, and tell him not only that the Cullens had left her unprotected, but also that she was pregnant. Laurent had realized, somehow, and she didn't know how Victoria would respond to that. It's unlikely she'd think the baby was Edward's, but she knew Victoria also wouldn't hold off just because she was expecting. Told ya they'd be okay, Bella, Embry said, almost smugly, and Bella nodded, taking a deep breath. Before she could even think to respond, they were interrupted by the door opening, and like yesterday, Sam ran to Emily, pulling her into his arms. This time her heart didn't quench so much at the sight because she found herself suddenly in Jacob's warm embrace, his face buried in her hair as he inhaled her scent, reassuring himself that she was truly here and safe. "I'm okay," she reassured him quietly. "I'm okay. God, Bells," he said, pulling away. "Don't scare me like that again." "I'll try," she said quietly. He pulled away, holding her face in her hands and kissing her forehead briefly before taking a seat on the chair next to her, not wanting to be far from her after what happened today. "Aren't you meant to be in school?" He paused, looking at his watch. "Only 11 a.m. Bella resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "I wasn't feeling good this morning," she replied. "Charlie talked me into taking the day, but I got restless. I was trying to find that meadow," he concluded. "You should have waited for me. I'm surprised you didn't get lost out there." "I almost did," she replied. Jacob was about to respond, probably with a snarky comment about her sense of direction, but he was interrupted by Sam clearing his throat, gaining the attention of everyone in the small room. Bella then noticed the rest of the back. Kay had squeezed themselves into the kitchen, their tall forms towering over her as she sat by Jacob at the table. This would feel threatening to many, but it made her feel safe. "So I think we all have some questions after this morning," Sam stated, his gaze burning into Bella's as the rest of the pack turned to look at her, too. "Who was that?" Bella sighed and glanced at Jacob, who offered her a reassuring smile. "Jake was right," she started. "That was Laurent. He was there when James tried to kill me, but he helped us. He helped us get away. So why was he about to suck you dry?" Paul interrupted. Bella flinched and she saw Jacob shoot him a glare from the corner of her eye. "He said he came as a favor, for Victoria," Bella said quietly. "She's James's mate." Jake was right. "She wants revenge. Well, she's looking in the wrong place. She's not going to find any of the Cullens here," Embry remarked, rolling his eyes. Bella looked down at the table, avoiding their questioning looks. "She wants me," Bella stated. She thinks Edward will hurt like she did if she kills me." They didn't respond, and the silence felt awkward. Like they were all thinking exactly what Bella knew. That Edward wouldn't care at all if she died. She wasn't his mate, and he wasn't hers. "She obviously doesn't know that he won't," Bella whispered, and she felt Jake's arm around her shoulders. Bella felt herself zone out after that. She heard bits of their ongoing conversation, including Sam setting up more patrols around her home, which Paul seemed angry about, but Jacob put him in his place quickly. She noticed Sam seemed troubled about the increased patrols. "We need to stay rested too. And stay around our actual home. We have our own people to protect, too," Sam stated, and he gave Bella a look. She wasn't sure what to make of that comment, but she understood. They really had no obligation to her, specifically. They would absolutely want to protect their own family. She leaned into Jacob's half-embrace, trying to pay attention to the conversation that sounded miles away, and was going between the pack too quickly for her to understand the words. Part of her was grateful. She already felt guilty about having them help her. They spoke almost as quickly as vampires did, and the speed in which their lips moved made her feel queasy if she tried to focus on them. She found herself drifting, feeling much like her body didn't belong to her anymore. Whether it was from the shock of the day or the fear that she knew she felt, even if only subconsciously, she soon found Emily Whippen. Her cheeks from tears she hadn't realized had fallen. Apparently Jake hadn't either, because his face whipped straight to hers once he realized what Emily was doing. The ongoing conversation suddenly forgot about. "Hey," he said, pulling his arm from around her shoulders, forcing her to sit up slightly as she took the tissue from Emily, who gave her a small reassuring smile. "You okay?" Bella started. She didn't know how to answer. The reality of the situation was setting in. Her life was at real risk, but that didn't mean only her life, now. She realized that had she learned Victoria was after her a month ago, she wouldn't have been terrified at all. Death may have been the sweet release from this grief and pain, but she couldn't afford to give into that. Now she had someone else to protect. Someone she loved already, somehow. I don't know, she said quietly, honestly. She didn't have a clue. Her emotions had been incredibly confusing these past few days. He frowned and pulled her back close again. We'll get her, Bells. He reassured me. We got this Laurent guy. We'll get her too. All of this, it's just to make sure you're safe in the meantime. We'll keep you safe. Bella translated the words in her own head. They'll keep her safe, which means they'll keep the baby safe, too. Instinctively she brought her right arm around her stomach as she nodded into Jacob's chest. She realized then that the pack had stopped conversing with each other. Obviously they had concluded their planning discussion. Bella couldn't recall any of it, and figured she'd ask Jacob later exactly what it is they had planned. Noting the way Jacob held her, she doubted she'd be left alone at any point soon. Usually that would bother her, but the thought was reassuring. Come on, let's get out of here, Jacob said suddenly and pulled her to her feet. She swayed slightly due to the sudden movement, but he grasped her arms as she steadied herself. Jacob guided her out of the room. Bella turned slightly to say something to the pack, but Jacob had pulled her from the house before she could. Jake, she frowned. I wanted to thank them. They saved my life, too, you know. He let go of her and he looked at her sheepishly. Sorry, he sighed, his hands running through his hair. I just had to get out of there. He gestured to Bella's truck, which Bella had only just noticed in the drive. Jacob quickly explained that they'd seen her truck parked up before heading to Emily's, so he'd driven it up while the rest ran. She was grateful. She hadn't considered how she was going to find her truck again, since she wasn't even sure now she could remember where she'd parked it. You okay? Bella asked as soon as they were both in the cab of her truck, Jake in the driver's seat. Yeah, he replied quietly, looking out of the windshield into the trees. That was just close, Bells. When we caught his scent we were all so giddy. It had been a while since anyone had caught any scent, but then I caught yours. And saw his face right on your neck. Bella took his hand in hers. She hadn't really considered how he would have felt, seeing that. I'm not scared of vamps, he scoffed, but I am scared of losing you. Bella shifted in her seat slightly, not sure how to feel about such a declaration. You won't, she replied simply. However, she wasn't at all sure that was something she could promise. Leaving was still something she had to consider, for the sake of the people she loved, including Jacob. Yet, I feel like I will, he said, frowning and shaking his head. I pushed you away because I was scared of it. I still am. It doesn't help that you. He cut himself off, sighing deeply and turning his head away from her. Bella's heart quenched at his angry tone, which was directed at her. It hurt the hole that existed in her chest, making it burn in a slightly unfamiliar way. She thought her and Jake had gotten over the brief hiccup in their friendship, but his words made her think that maybe he hadn't. That I what, Jake? She asked quietly. He must have heard the fear and upset in her voice because his face softened and he looked at her. I just feel like there's more, he responded, shaking his head as he spoke. Something you're not telling us. She opened her mouth to tell him he was wrong, until she remembered that he wasn't. She closed her mouth again quickly and he huffed, raising his eyebrows to gesture towards her hesitance. She didn't really know what to say. Just promise me you're telling us everything you know about Victoria, he murmured. For now that's all we need. She breathed a sigh of relief at his tone. She wasn't mad at her, after all. I am, she replied quietly. Good, he smiled. We'll get her, Bells. Anything else there is, you know I'm here for you, right? You can talk to me about these things. I'm probably the only person you really can talk to. Bella laughed softly, knowing he was right. She wanted to tell him about her pregnancy, but was nervous. Nervous about losing him again. She promised herself she would tell him, but not today. Today had already been a lot to deal with and she didn't want to push herself, or Jacob too far. Of course, Jake, she responded eventually. I'm glad, he said. You can't scare me away, Bells. Bella doubted that, but she smiled and nodded regardless. We should probably get you home, Jacob said, looking at the clock on the dashboard. It was 3 p.m. by now. Just in case Charlie finishes work early. The rest of the day traveled quickly, Jacob opting to spend the afternoon with Bella at her house. He mostly sat watching football reruns while Bella did some schoolwork, sitting on the floor using the coffee table as a desk. She had been ahead in her classes, so the missed days hadn't set her back. But she was eager to be done with high school as soon as possible. Charlie returned home early, as Jake predicted, at 6 p.m. Bells, he called as he opened the door, and Bella looked up from the history book she'd been bent over. In here, she called back, and he walked through into the living room, looking in surprise as Jacob, who had fallen asleep on the couch. Oh, Charlie huffed. Didn't realize you had a guest. Yeah, Bella muttered. He turned up after school. I was kinda glad for some company. The lie came surprisingly easily, considering she was glad for the company. Glad you're friends again, kid, Charlie said, sitting on his recliner and bending down to take off his boots. How are you feeling? Better, thanks, Bella replied. This was kind of a lie. While she hadn't been sick since this morning, the nausea sat heavy in her stomach. The thought of eating almost made her want to throw up. I'll order in for dinner, Charlie pondered, and Bella disguised her sigh of relief with a nod. She could possibly handle a slice of pizza. Suppose Jacob will stay, too. Bella smiled slightly and shrugged. She knew he probably wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. Charlie ordered some pizzas, then excused himself to the bathroom to shower. Bella had given up on her school work now. She had caught up on the missed work and was now on track to be even more ahead of her peers. For a moment she wondered whether she could finish high school early. Given her situation, it might be necessary. She made a mental note to research the possibility. Before she could think on it anymore, Jacob rolled over on the couch, almost falling over the edge, making Bella snort. Oops, he said, adjusting himself into a sitting position. Sorry, I didn't mean to fall asleep. It's okay, it's been a long day. She smiled. I've not been an exciting host. You're perfect, Bells. He smiled at her, and Bella adjusted her gaze from his, turning her attention to gathering the books and papers on the desk. The rest of the night was uneventful, Jacob and Charlie arguing over the last Seahawks game, while Bella silently sat and listened to their playful banter. She managed one slice of pizza, which earned side eyes from Jacob. Meanwhile, Charlie remained unaware. She was grateful that he was so oblivious, sometimes. Once it hit 10 p.m., Bella excused herself to go to bed, while Jacob stood and stated he should be getting back. After declining a ride from Charlie, he and Bella walked into the hallway. I've gotta take my bike home, but I'll be back, Jake promised. What? Bella questioned. You don't have to do that. Quote, you didn't listen while we were discussing plans at Emily's, did you? He laughed softly. I tried. Kinda zoned out, she said tiredly. I'll fill you in when I'm back, he said. If you're still awake, I'll sneak in the window, leave it open. She forced a smile and gave him a stiff nod. She hadn't left her window open at night for someone to enter in months. And the reminder made her heart burn. She watched as Jacob left, then did as he asked, quickly to the bathroom to do her nighttime routine after pushing the latch up, not looking at the open window any longer than she needed to. Entering her room after taking a quick shower to wash away the day, she was unsurprised to see Jacob in her room already. He was looking at her corkboard next to her desk, which had a lot of empty space since she hadn't filled it after her pictures had been taken away. She looked away, not wanting to think about the missing pictures. She moved to her bed, sitting in the middle of it, while Jacob tore himself from the corkboard and sat on the bed next to her. Sue, Jacob trailed. Since you missed the plan, I'll give you a rundown. Ish. Bella took a deep breath, nodding. Obviously I can't be with you 24/7. Jake started. And we all, minus Sam and Paul, still have school. I don't want you to miss school because of me, Bella said quietly, and Jacob rolled his eyes and nodded. Sam nor Paul seemed happy about having to protect me. It's no big deal. The people who matter know the truth about us, he explained. The school won't care, and they'd let us make up work in other ways. And Sam and Paul just worry too much. Sam worries about Emily, Paul worries about his mom. We all have people to worry about. Jake, Bella started but he cut her off. Knowing he was about to oppose. This is our job, Bella. He explained. Besides, you won't know we're there every day. If it makes you feel better I can tell them all to stay hidden, but close. Maybe, Bella whispered. She'd still be taking up their time. It won't be for long, anyway. Jacob started, pulling himself from the bed and sitting at the desk. Just until we find her. Ella nodded again and positioned herself under the covers, feeling suddenly exhausted. Sleep. I'll be here, he said and pulled out a backpack Bella hadn't noticed he'd brought back from his house. He pulled out a laptop, pressing the on button and placing it on the desk. I'm just gonna sit here and do my homework. Got a lot to catch up on. Bella rolled her eyes. He'd said previously this evening that he was caught up. But clearly that was a ruse so he could watch the football instead of joining Bella in her study session. Settling down, Bella found that she was asleep before Jacob's old laptop had lit up the corner of her bedroom. The end.